Many of you have requested this, so here it is. I'm going to go through every one of these special editions and tell you where they are from and what the special edition is, because some of you do not recognize the page edges, which is totally fine. This is going to be a long video, so please like this video and drop a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. Here we go. Hang on to your hats. This is going to be a long one. I had to break out the step stool so I could reach the top shelf. So we have our first edition here. This is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This is from Dazzling Bookish Shop. Look at those edges. Highly recommend the shop. I've purchased many things from them. This one is just a standard edition that I bought from Barnes & Nobles. I don't know if they still have this one, but that is where I got it from. These two right here, this is Twin Crowns and its sequel, Cursed Crowns. This one is just the Waterstones edition. This one is from Fairy Loot. This one with the gold and the boat is this book here, and this is the Illumicrate edition. This one here with all of this detailing is this book, and this is from Fairy Loot. This one here is a Waterstones edition, and this is Masters of Death. This one here is the Book Eaters, and that one is from Illumicrate. This one is from the Broken Binding, and I actually have the sequel coming. I just ordered that one. This one is another Illumicrate one. This is one of my favorites with the castle. This is Empire of the Vampire. This one is also Illumicrate, and this one is Babel. It doesn't say it on there, but it does say it on here. This one is Hellbent, and this is a Waterstones edition. Sorry, new angle, my step stool didn't reach. I have this one here. This is Of Shadow and Moonlight, and this is Bookish Box. I'm fairly certain everyone recognizes this one by now, but this is just the standard first edition of The Fourth Wing. Here we have the Illumicrate version of The Whispering Dark. Here we have the Fairy Loot version of Divine Rivals. This one is another beautiful Waterstones edition. This one is of Yellowface. This one is another one of my Waterstones editions. This one is of the Atlas 6. Here's that Dazzling Bookish Shop again, and they made a beautiful edition of Belladonna. So this guy is the Fairy Loot edition of House of Earth and Blood, and this is the Illumicrate version of House of Earth and Blood. I know, how many editions do I need? Too many. This is the Waterstones edition. Yes, I have a lot of Waterstones editions of One for My Enemy. Love this book. This one is a Fairy Loot edition of Cruel Illusions. This one is another Bookish Box one, and this one is a Broken Blade. This one was from the Broken Binding. This one is Frontier. This is a Fairy Loot edition. I love the little pterodactyl. And this one is City of Nightmares. This one's another Waterstones edition. And this one is Girl Goddess Queen. This one's the Broken Binding again. And this one is Legends and Lattes. This one's a more recent Fairy Loot one. This one is If I Have to Be Haunted. Here we have the Illumicrate edition of Mortal Follies. Here we have the Illumicrate edition of the Luminaries, the Illumicrate edition of the Priory of the Orange Tree, and then I have the Broken Binding edition of the Priory of the Orange Tree, Waterstones edition of Ink Blood Sister Scribe, Waterstones edition of the Square of Sevens, Fairy Loot edition of Heart of the Sun Warrior, Dazzling Bookish Shop, The Davenports, Fairy Loot edition of This Vicious Grace, Fairy Loot edition of Spice Road. I got a couple more Waterstones one here. I have Study and Drowning, and I also have Upon a Frosted Star. Now these two right here are just the standard first editions that you could get. They're just first print editions. I'm noticing a lot more publishers doing that. This one is from the Bookish Box. Oh my gosh, everybody's coming out for the party. The Bookish Box. So these three were all in a row, so I just pulled them all at the same time. So we got Song of Silver Flame Like Night, Out of the Blue, and we got Hell Followed With Us. All of these were from Dazzling Bookish Shop. So just like this one up here that I talked about earlier, this one is also from Barnes & Noble that I got. This one is an Illumicrate edition, and this one is The Drowned Wood. This one's Illumicrate, and this is Alone With You in the Ether. Another Illumicrate, Song of Silver Flame Like Night. We have another Illumicrate, and that's this one. This one is Waterstones, and it's The Witching Tide. This one is the Illumicrate edition of Godkiller. Here we have a Fairy Loot edition. This one's The Darkening. I have the Illumicrate edition of A Day of Fallen Night, and I have the Broken Binding edition of A Day of Fallen Night to match these guys up here. Let me move this guy out of the way. And of course, just like up here, I have House of Sky and Breath. I have the Illumicrate edition. Let me move this. So I have the Illumicrate editions, House of Sky and Breath, and I have the Fairy Loot edition of House of Sky and Breath. This is the Waterstones edition of Fall of Ruin and Wrath. This is the Illumicrate edition of the Atlas Paradox. Alright guys, last shelf home stretch. This is the Fairy Loot edition of Silver in the Bone. This is the Fairy Loot edition of Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This is an Illumicrate edition of Some Desperate Glory. This is a Fairy Loot edition of Threads That Bind. So these are both the Hurricane Wars. This one is a Fairy Loot book, so you can see Fairy Loot. That's the front of it. This one is a Waterstones edition. Here we have an Illumicrate book, another stunning edition from Dazzling Bookish Shop. I've got these editions of Belladonna and Foxglove. Both of these are Fairy Loot. And then last but not least, I have Divine Rivals, and this one is an Owlcrate edition. If you have made it this far, congratulations! Please, drop whatever edition was your favorite in the comments below so I know you made it this far. And again, if you haven't already, hit that like button, because I'm freaking tired now. If you have any more questions, comments, anything about the books you've seen, or if you have more questions about the other 500,000 books that I own, please let me know.